in your view, did Mike Flynn and the Mike Flynn conviction, the Mike Flynn lies about the conversation with Kislyak, what did it always signal to you?
Well, I mean, as you stated earlier, I mean, it spoke to some sort of cover-up. I mean, Michael Flynn lying not just to FBI agents, but remember, Mike Pence, he lied to the vice president. That was one of the last straws before they walked him out of the White House. So, you know, you're struck by the fact that this is somebody who's being pardoned, who pled guilty, who admitted to the vice president that he'd lied to him. And it just sort of speaks to, you know, I think it's a kind of a perfect 4-year arc, if you will, for the embodiment of what the Trump presidency has come to be. And I can't help but think of the juxtaposition today to bring Biden back into this. You know, there's somebody today who addressed the nation with flags at their side, with what looked like the seal behind them. And you had somebody speaking over the speakerphone of an iPhone, held up by one of his lawyers as he pardoned somebody who'd pled guilty almost 4 years ago. It's remarkable. We're in that period of transition, but we have one person who is president and we have the other person who's acting like president.
Well, Jonathan Lemire, it's such a great point. Donald Trump, who in his own mind is great at television production, is producing himself to look like a two-bit criminal. I mean, he's, as Robert Gibbs just said, he's calling in on a phone in this horrifically produced stunt, and all of his lawyers' public events have been total losers. They've been panned by Tucker Carlson, for Pete's sake. And then he doesn't even, you know, if he's really proud of what he's doing, if he really thinks Mike Flynn is a good guy, have him over to the Rose Garden, put up the flags yourself, light yourself so so you look your best, if you will, and do it in the light of day. Instead, he sends out a skivvy tweet at 4 o'clock on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it certainly feels like a bit of a news dump there, Nicole, in terms of the timing of this pardon. And you're certainly right to highlight the really terrible split screen, let's be honest here, for President Trump. That Joe Biden today stood at the podium with the American flags and the backdrop of the president-elect and delivered a somber, very presidential message, warning Americans to take this virus extremely seriously here during the Thanksgiving holiday, but also saying, yes, that there is indeed light at the end of the tunnel, but the nation needed to stay strong until we got there. And then we have President Trump, who has largely remained behind closed doors. We did see him briefly yesterday at the White House. He came out to the briefing room and spoke for exactly 64 seconds, I believe it was, and then later proceeded over some other pardons, this time of turkeys, of corn and cob, a little less controversial than today's, but, refused to take any sort of questions from the media. And we see Rudy Giuliani, whose news conferences have gone sort of from bad to worse, from total landscaping and that in Philadelphia to the one at the RNC with the hair dye streaking down his cheek, to today in the ballroom of a Wyndham Hotel just outside Gettysburg, as the president calls in on a speakerphone, making nonsensical arguments about this election. We are seeing a president here who his advisors say he's so concerned about what the next step is going to be. That, yes, privately, they recognize this election is lost. This is about setting himself up beyond this for whatever the next step might be, whether it's into the media, whether it's certainly an effort to try to make some money, and yes, to keep his political future alive. And maybe he actually announces for 2024, or whether he just kind of stokes that fire for a while, keep those rumors going. His aides say that decision hasn't been made. But he's trying to set himself up as this sort of still the strong leader. And yet it seems like none of that is working. And yes, and right now what he has done, this pardon of Flynn, is going to make it extremely uncomfortable for more and more Republicans. This is now the topic of conversation instead of these runoff in Georgia, which is what Mitch McConnell wants to be talking about.
Frank, I'm just thinking, I'm looking at these pictures of Mike Flynn. He had the shortest tenure as White House National Security Advisor in history. And some of the names that are in circulation have been reported as being in contention to be President Biden's new Attorney General were involved in this episode. Sally Yates was the acting Attorney General, and she was the one that went over and told Don McGahn, who was the new White House counsel at the time, that they had evidence through, I believe, an intercept. We listened sometimes to the Russians. That was where we picked up Ambassador Kislyak, Russia's ambassador, talking to Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn proceeded to lie about those conversations, as Robert Gibbs said, to the vice president. and to the FBI. He was charged, he was convicted, he pleaded guilty twice in a court of law. He was awaiting sentencing. Donald Trump sought to have that investigation stopped, curtailed by Jim Comey, who refused. It went on, but today he has pardoned him. And I wonder if you think that arc, as Robert Gibbs called it, a bookend, what does that portend if Sally Yates is a figure tapped for a leadership position at the Justice Department for President Biden?
Well, there's some karma-like irony that could be involved here, where the person at DOJ who tried to warn the White House, who tried to get justice on the table with regard to the threat that Mike Flynn posed with his relationship to Russia, his potential for compromise by Russia because he was lying, and Russia knew he was lying to the vice president, to the FBI, that same person could end up back at DOJ overseeing the justice system and the Department of Justice. So the irony would be sweet. I can already hear Republicans in Trump's orbit claiming that can't happen. She should recuse herself. She's too close to this. You can hear the whole recusal drumbeat starting right now because she was involved in this. But I know this. The president who claims he's a law and order president has just said in this pardon that it's okay to lie to law enforcement, even if you admit that you've done it. So we need an attorney general who actually is about law and order. I don't really care who Biden picks, because any of the names in circulation would be far better and far more representative of America than the current attorney general who occupies that seat. We need an attorney general who understands that America is his or her client and who therefore relates to America and understands what we've been through as a country in the last 4 years. Understand that you have up to a 6% more chance if you're black of getting shot by the police in this country. So we need an attorney general who looks at civil rights and releases DOJ and allows them to go at patterns and practices investigations of police departments. We need an attorney general who understands the disparity in the justice system right now. So Biden's headed in that direction. Whoever it is will be law and order, not like the president claims he is.
And Robert Gibbs, to come back to you and sort of your idea of a bookend, this is a chapter that started with Mike Flynn leading the lock her up chants. It really started to get the attention of the national news media at the convention in Minneapolis when he led lock her up chants in the entire convention hall. It seems like another time when we gathered at political conventions. He then rose to this job over the objections of Chris Christie, who was the transition director until he was fired by Jared. And others. There were warnings also from then President Obama, who knew that while his service in the military was honorable, that Mike Flynn had some questionable judgment. He had traveled to Moscow and attended an event and given some paid speeches there. And he came in with warnings from former President Obama, from Chris Christie, who ran the transition. Donald Trump put him there anyway. He only lasted 14 days. He is almost like an avatar from everything that was wrong with how Donald Trump viewed national security, that he made this man his national security advisor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I think every appointee for Donald Trump was there to serve Donald